Hello. It's April 1st, April Fools. I actually just recorded a video, but I wasn't really that happy with it. And so I'm going to redo this differently this time. But I still have the same basic idea, but maybe to try to approach it a bit differently. Um, my idea for the video was to call it No Big Secrets, based on a reference to a Talking Heads song called Making Flippy Floppy. And I was just like listening to music, and had a bunch of songs in my head, and I was thinking. I made a video where I read them out, right? I read out the lyrics, and one of the idea I had for this was that there's a lot of information out there, right? And that we live in a very media saturated world, right? And that I think there's an inability to achieve this what's called deep listening. It's an idea from Pauline Oliveros, and I'm into meditation and stuff like this, and that there's this idea in Zen that if you stop thinking about it, if you stop talking about it, and just be silent, there's nothing you cannot know, right? And that it's like a kind of a misconception that to not think means to just be ignorant or something like this. Is that there's oftentimes thinking is actually avoiding something, right? Because you're going around in a circle, you're beating around the bush, so to speak, rather than in avoiding the thing you don't want to talk about, right? And I was thinking of reading out some stuff, but you know what? I'm gonna read something different because people on my channel like Byung Chul Han so much. Because I know my Byung Chul Han videos do so well. I might as well read some Byung Chul Han for you, right? And I think, but to clarify where I'm coming with this from an astrological point of view, Mercury, of course, is what we're doing here is a square between Mercury and Pluto. Mercury is going to ingress into Taurus in a few days, and it will run in. It's already kind of applying to the square, the Pluto, which is recently in Aquarius. And actually, there's some things that I could get into about this, because one of the things about Pluto and Capricorn, it's been there for the last 15 years or something, is that one of the imaginal things that I kind of latched onto was this thing about Capricorn and the god Pan, the goat god, because there's this whole. That's one thing that Adam Ellenboss mentioned was the goat horns, the goat one, and that when the pandemic hit, the fear, right, the fear around the pandemic was kind of like the god Pan. There's this kind of natural animal instinct of survival and stuff like that I feel is very much rooted into the earth sign of the survival instinct, the fear that comes from the root chakra kind of thing to keep you alive or the sexual system is all related to Pan, right? And that we turn that into a kind of a devil because it's the god that's related to our own fear of survival and our natural instincts and stuff like this, right? That's kind of that there's something about the Capricorn sign being very earthy, that it becomes this thing about work in a lot of modern astrology conversations, because it's about survival, having the material resources, managing the material resources, all this, but it's about that basic earthy element there's people have been said that there's this sort of thing about the demonization of nature, the demonization of Mother Earth or whatever, where the Earth is evil because it's the temptations of the body and pleasure or worldly power is all associated with the devil, right? And so that where the transcendent God is above all these things and stuff like this, right? There's I recently have been on a bit of a Jodorowsky kick, and I watched his movies Endless Poetry and Dance of Reality for the first time, and I believe it was it Dance? I can't remember which one it was. Either of those two movies, it kind of are the two kind of go together in some way. There was this line from Jodorowsky where he says, I am selling my devil to the soul. Rather than I'm selling my soul to the devil, I'm selling my devil to the soul, right? And when you sell your devil to the soul, then the devil is not an enemy anymore. The devil is in the game, right? And so your devil is part of the cards you're dealing with in your deck and you don't have to see it as an enemy kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's incorporated, it's included, right? And so we don't have to be caught up in the fear and the panic and all this kind of stuff because we've sold our devil to the soul, right? But so that's Capricorn though. Now, we've got new archetypes to deal with now that Pluto has ingressed into Aquarius, and so like forget that stuff. Now that we're done with Capricorn, what's this Pluto and Aquarius? Is it the same Pan? Is it the same devil? Is it the same Hades? Is it the same underworld? Aquarius is a different game because it's on an earth sign, it's an air sign, right? Where the earth sign is all about the devil that has to do with your natural environment, power over nature, power over the environment, or the pleasure of nature, the sensuousness of the natural world, or the fear of your own, the survival instincts and stuff like this, the pressure to survive or whatever. This is all Capricorn kind of stuff, as far as I'm concerned. Once you get into Aquarius, we've got an air sign, completely different. We've got an air sign that's all about social structures. People talk about Aquarius. People talk about science and technology. You've got the image of the water pourer, the cupbearer, which is like the Ganymede myth. And there's a kind of like being in service kind of thing. There's a higher service that kind of. So this is the thing about with Capricorn, it's all about survival, right? And then Aquarius is all about technology, about techniques, about information, about systems, about theory, about advancing, about like trying to progress in a way, right? Or trying to get free from things that have held us back before. There's all this. There's a whole different thing going on. I mean, you probably, if you guys watch astrology videos, you probably will hear other people talk about this, right? So I try to do this stuff where I bring in like books I like and stuff like this to mix it up and try to introduce some new stuff to it, right? But there's this thing about the limit. I don't know. When I think about this Pluto in Aquarius squaring Mercury, which is about to ingress into Taurus, there's a couple things to consider. One of which is like corruption and power with technology and science and all this kind of stuff, and also even just petty crime like whatever, identity theft and scams. Like I got some phishing scams, more of those coming through, and they'll watch out for those. Whatever, like that could be increased cyber attacks, increased cyber crime. That's kind of a mundane astrology, right? However, because I like to take a deeper look on things, and I don't know, people probably don't like. There's this thing I'm doing where the kind of people who are subscribing to my channel are probably not the people who are reading Byung Chul Han, but my attitude is like, why waste this opportunity? Why waste an opportunity like this? If I've got all these people listening to my channel, why not diversify your information a little bit, right? So I'm just going to dive into this one. This is from his book Psychopolitics. And this is what he says about Dataism. In the pages of the New York Times, David Brooks has announced a data revolution. His words are as prophetic as Chris Anderson's famous article, The End of Theory. Dataism is the name of the new faith. If you ask me to describe the rising philosophy of the day, I'd say it is Dataism. We now have the ability to gather huge amounts of data. This ability seems to carry with it certain cultural assumptions that everything can be measured and should be measured, that data is a transparent and reliable lens that allows us to filter out emotionalism and ideology, that data will help us to do remarkable things, like foretell the future. That the data revolution is giving us wonderful ways to understand the present and the past. Now, this is Byung Chul Han making a kind of criticism of this. Dataism has taken the stage with the fervor of a second enlightenment. During the first enlightenment, statistics was thought to possess the capacity to liberate human knowledge from the clutches of mythology. Accordingly, euphoric celebration occurred. In light of such developments, Voltaire even voiced the wish for a new historiography, freed from past superstitions. Statistics, as he put it, offers an object of curiosity for anyone who would like to read history as a citizen, as a philosopher. Revised by statistics, history would become truly philosophical. As Rutger Camp writes, the numbers of statistics provide the basis from which Voltaire can articulate his mythological mistrust of all histories that exist only as narratives. The stories of ancient history accordingly offer an example that borders on mythology for him. Statistics and enlightenment are one and the same for Voltaire. Statistics mean setting objective knowledge founded on and driven by numbers in opposition to mythological narration. So you can maybe understand why it's, as an astrologer, this conversation is interesting to me, because the thing about a mythological narration, I feel like there's this whole attitude where astrology is not taken seriously because we want objective facts, objective data, objective scientific information, and that astrology is an archaic way of interpreting, predicting things using mythological stories, using magical thinking. You think the planets have special powers, or I'm not going to get into that now, but let's hear what Byung Chul Han keeps saying about this, right? Now, transparency is the buzzword of the Second Enlightenment. Data are supposed to be a pellucid medium. As Brooks describes them, data afford a transparent and reliable lens. The imperative of a Second Enlightenment declares everything must become data and information. The soul of the Second Enlightenment is data totalitarianism, or data fetishism. Although it announces that it is taking leave of all ideology, Dataism is itself an ideology. It is leading to digital totalitarianism. Therefore, a third enlightenment is called for in order to shine a light on how digital enlightenment has transformed into a new kind of servitude. Big data is supposed to be a freeing knowledge from subjective arbitrariness. By this logic, intuition does not represent a higher form of knowledge. Instead, it's like this is why I like this. Intuition, right? Okay. It's like maybe you guys, my intuitive astrological audience, can appreciate why I'm bringing this kind of stuff, which I don't see any other astrologers talking about, into the picture. So the intuition does not represent a higher form of knowledge. Instead, it represents something merely subjective, a stopgap compensating for the shortage of objective data. In complex situations, the argument goes, intuition is blind. The mistrust even extends to theory, which is suspected of being an ideology. If enough data are available, it should prove superfluous as well. The Second Enlightenment is the age of purely data-driven knowledge. Anderson's visionary rhetoric goes out with every theory of human behavior, from linguistics to sociology. Forget taxonomy, ontology, and psychology. Who knows why people do what they do? The point is they do it, and we can track and measure it with unprecedented fidelity. With enough data, the numbers speak for themselves. The medium of the First Enlightenment was reason. However, imagination, corporeality, and desire were first repressed in its name. By a fatal dialectic, the First Enlightenment switched over into barbarism. Now, in the Second Enlightenment, which appeals to information, data, and transparency in the name, the same dialectic threatens to do the same. The Second Enlightenment is summoning forth a new kind of violence. The dialectic of enlightenment holds that the process of illumination that set out to destroy mythology became entangled with every stride it made in a mythology of its own. False clarity is only another name for myth. Adorno would say that the transparency of today is another name for myths too. That Dataism likewise heralds false clarity. The dialectic of old is also making the Second Enlightenment, which seeks to counter ideology into an ideology of its own right. More still, it is leading to the barbarism of data. Dataism, it turns out, is amounting to digital dataism. Dadaism. He's kind of making a joke of Dataism and Dataism with D-A-D-A, the art movement. Dadaism also takes leave of meaningful contexts of every kind. It empties language itself of sense. The acts of life have no beginnings or end. Everything happens in a completely idiotic way. That is why everything is alike. Simplicity is called Dada. Dadaism is nihilism. It gives up on any and all meaning. Data and numbers are not narrative, they are additive. Meaning, on the other hand, is based on narration. Data simply fills up the senseless void. Now, numbers and data are not just being absolutized, they are becoming sexualized and fetishized. This amounts to nothing other than libidinal energy flowing into today's quantified self. On the whole, Dataism is displaying libidinous, indeed pornographic traits. Dataists are mate with their data. In the meanwhile, there's even talk of data sexuals. They are relentlessly digital and consider data sexy. The digitist is starting to play the part of the phallus. And then he goes on to the quantified self, which is like the self which is defined by how many likes I have, how many subscribers I have. And then the thing is, I have to admit, by doing this stuff, I'm not saying I don't care what people think about me. Screw all you guys, whether you like my, like, I actually do have some attachment to being liked and having my numbers go up and stuff. So I'm not, I'd like to be more against the stuff than I am, unfortunately. But there is what I'm trying to get at here is that I think there's an issue with this addiction to dataism, in that I will read you another quote. This one is from H.P. Lovecraft. He says, "The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. The sciences, each straining in its own direction, have hitherto harmed us little. But some day the piecing together of dissociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality and of our frightful position therein that we shall either go mad from the revelation or flee from the light into the peace and safety of a new dark age." Right? And I included that in the video that I made that I didn't want to put out. And there's some certain things that I don't know if I was being too edgy about it with like going in the Lovecraft direction and stuff. But the issue I think about when you put these things together is that not only is there an addiction to data, but we've lost the ability to correlate the data. And I have this attitude like we really do not need any more data. We don't need any more information. What we need is we need to slow down. We need to chill out. And we need to just sit with all the data that we've accumulated. And then from that, to start to sort of gain a bit of insight, to be able, we have the stuff, it's like getting a whole bundle of stuff, and it's all there, but it's all just mixed up, and it's all mixed up that you don't see what it is. And so it takes a bit of work to sort of I kind of made this video, I'm not going to say exactly, but when I made this video and it just felt off, and then I looked back and I started watching, and I started to see it's kind of what they call metacognition, right? Where you can start to watch your own thought process, and it also helps if you watch, if you record a video blog and then you watch the video blog and then you slow down and then watch this person. It's so funny. Am I the only one who gets this? Where you record a video like this, and then, it might only be like an hour or two later, or the next day, or the next week, and you're watching yourself deliver this thing on the screen, and you're like, who is this guy? Who is this guy on the screen? Like, I'm here watching this guy talk, and I don't know if I agree with all the stuff coming out of this guy's mouth, but wait a minute. Oh, I guess that is me. I guess this is my room. I guess those are my books. I guess this is my clothes. I guess this weird dude is me, right? Even though by the time I'm finished making this video, I might have different ideas in my mind than I did when I first started making the video, right? I may have a different perspective than I did when I started making the video. And that's kind of what happened this morning, is that I started with a certain idea of where I wanted to go with it. I recorded the video, then afterwards I decided, I could do better than that, right? That's not what I want to put out. I could do better than that. And now I'm doing this one. And then this is one of these things where with Pluto they talk about change and transformation, right? And maybe shedding the skin or something. There's all this stuff where I have some ambitions, maybe to be a writer, to maybe try to do something, try to contribute something, but it's not as easy as it looks. Like, there's something about, like, I kind of relate to H.P. Lovecraft in a way, because H.P. Lovecraft apparently he was like, I don't relate to all the racism stuff, of course, but like being a sensitive guy, he ended up living with his mom too, right? He was a sensitive guy who kind of retreated, lived with his mom, and wrote a bunch of weird stories, and he was really insecure about them. Like, he didn't think his writing was very good. It's like when you're sensitive, like you kind of become self-conscious because if there's any flaw, you're aware of what the flaw is, and if there's any like, and you're also like the whole having the ambition to be a writer, and you're kind of aware of where you sit. Like there's stuff, like I think Lovecraft was probably in his own way a smart guy, but in the way that he could see, he knew what talent he had and what talent he didn't have, right? And it can be really harsh to make that kind of negotiation, to be like, I'm not a hotshot. I'm just an ordinary dude as anybody else. And how can I justify, staying in my room and writing a novel, writing a book, putting all this effort into a piece of art when I'm no better than the guy flipping burgers. I'm no better than the guy mowing the lawns. I'm no better than the guy, looking after the old people in the hospital. What right do I have to avoid all these meaningful things, to write a bunch of weird stories that will just freak people out? You know what I mean? Or to do, like, I'm just going to avoid all this normal, everyday, good life stuff to create fictional stories of horror and strangeness and stuff. It's like what the, he'd probably have to battle with that every day to be like, why can't I just live a normal life and be a normal person? Why do I have to do this stupid thing that maybe people won't even understand, or even, fortunately for him, at least he got a bit of success, right? But I am just saying, I don't completely relate to his attitude, but I relate to being in that position a little bit. And I relate to this kind of thing like when I've been through, like I've said, mental health stuff, psychosis stuff, and this whole thing of there is a scary thing going on, that why people, why it freaks people out, why people have to stay on meds, why people, why the Jungians are afraid of the psyche, why if you talk to Jungian people, you notice pretty quickly that there's Jungians are uncomfortable about the topic they're talking about. They're interested explorers of the psyche, but they're also afraid of what might lurk there, kind of thing, right? And I don't mean to make this into a big scary thing, but there's that's what Pluto is, right? That Pluto in Capricorn was more about the physical, we're afraid of our own instincts, our own instinctual nature. Well, that is like a devil. And that, whereas when you get into Aquarius, we are afraid of the other kind of devil, which is like the devil of technology. We're afraid of, it's like Terminator 2 or something like that, where there's this fear of the technology, the machine. There's a fear of losing our organic humanness to becoming totally mechanical. But one of the things that I think, though, is that a lot of times when these kind of things that play out people's fears is of the machine and stuff like that, is we're not afraid of something that is going to happen. We're afraid of, it's our senses trying to tell us that there's something wrong with where we're at right now. Like, we're not, and I have to admit that I am kind of go both ways, that I do like playing around with technology, but I appreciate, it feels a lot better not to be staring at screens all day. It feels a lot better to be out in the sun, in the fresh air, to connect with nature and all this kind of stuff. And there's this understanding that there's some artificial thing, like we just intuitively know it. I'm not paranoid really in the same extent about AI, but I also know that there's something about the artificiality of it, that there's so much more, there's so much more depth in the human experience, right? And I mean, the thing is, it's like, it'll be interesting after this when Pluto's in Pisces. Well, I mean, wonder what that's going to be like, right? But for now, with this Pluto and Aquarius stuff, I think this might be a good one to put out to offer you guys on the problem of dataism and the obsession with collecting data, and that it might be better to take an attitude that's like Pauline Oliveros, right? With deep listening, where instead of rushing around from one piece of data to another, you can take something and just listen to it very deeply. Or you can take things and listen to it over and over again. Or you can take your own recordings and listen to yourself and then develop, to listen to what's going on with yourself, right? And then, and I just feel like we're drowned out by so much noise and so much like that we miss the big thing that is just staring us right in the face. And that's what I was trying to do with my last video, but I think maybe I'll do a better job with this. And hopefully you guys can put up with my whatever putting Byung Chul hand. I really don't know. I feel like my creative edge is trying to go into these less, you know, I don't want to, I can't just, if I inhabit just the predictable place of what astrology videos are supposed to be like, I'm just going to rip off Adam Ellenboss, basically. I'm just going to do my best Adam Ellenboss impersonation, or at best Chris Brennan impersonation, and it's going to be like the cheap rip-off version of somebody else's stuff. I gotta do my own stuff. I gotta do my own project here, right? So that's what I'm trying to do. And yeah, I don't know. I'm not above attachment to followers and subscribers. So if you guys want to follow and subscribe me, it helps the channel grow. Please do that. Thank you very much. Okay.